Hey everybody, this is Miss Shannon, fifth grade teacher here at South Greenville. So I'm going to be sharing a strategy with you guys today that I like to call the throwaway two strategy in my classroom. So with this strategy, how it works is that when kids are answering multiple choice questions, which is what majority of check-ins and EOGs are going to be, there's a lot of strategies that students can actually use to help eliminate answers and help making their chances getting their questions correct a little higher. Okay, it's better to look at two answer choices to try to get your answer than trying to look at four. We all know that you're going to have a higher percentage or a higher chance of getting it correct. So I'm going to be going through some sample EOG questions from the past for third, fourth, and fifth grade and reading, science, and math. So if you see the little spot up there where it says release test, that is because it is a actually released EOG. I took it straight off of the DPI website, but that watermark cannot get taken off. So you will see that, but we're just going to kind of go through and I want to talk about some ways that students can use some strategies in reading, math, and science to help them eliminate some answers when they are taking tests. So, for example, I'm just going to start off with this here, which is an ELA question. So it says, which describes a good terrarium? Okay. So, of course, with questions, students do still need to have a good bit of background knowledge, and they still need to know exactly what's been talked about, what's been read about in the passage, and what exactly is going on. All right, so for example, a student may look at this and see good terrarium and associate the word good with something that you would actually want, something that is going to be wanted or needed. So using that information without even knowing what a terrarium may be, students will know that if something is recycled or used, that does not always mean that it is going to come in a good condition. If something is expensive or fancy, that does not necessarily mean that it is going to be good. So just with thinking about the word good in this question, students are able to go ahead and throw away two, which would be C and D. And now they would be looking at answer choices A and B, which they may need to go back in their passage to help get more clarification in order to actually answer that question. Okay, let's look at another one. So if we look at this one, what does the phrase spread the table mean in paragraph 8? So again, students, of course, are going to want to refer back to paragraph 8 to help them, but there are still some things that we can do to help eliminate some answers here. So spread the table. Okay, so if you're thinking about spreading the table, to spread a table, students may relate that to something that they have actually done in real life. If your parents tell you to go spread the table, maybe you're setting the table up or you're laying everything out on the table so everybody has what they need. Okay. But we do know that if somebody normally says to spread the table, you are not taking a table and separating it. Okay, that does not mean that you're spreading the table. This is a use of figurative language. And I always tell my kids with figurative language, 99.9% of the time, you do want to get rid of the most obvious answer because most of the time that is not what it is referring to. You're spreading the table. We are not actually separating that table apart. Okay. Another one that students may want to eliminate would be make the table cleaner. So again, if you are referring back to your parents telling you to spread the table, most of the time they're asking you to lay stuff out on the table or place things where it needs to be placed in order for everyone to have everything they need. If you're doing that, you're not cleaning off the table or making the table cleaner. You're actually putting stuff up there to make it look the way that it needs to look. So with that information, students are able to go ahead and get rid of two answer choices here. And then again, they would need to go back into their passage, look at paragraph 8 to kind of really focus in on which one of those answer choices are going to be the best answer. Okay. Let's look at another ELA question. Sometimes ELA can be the hardest ones, especially how things kind of change depending on what kind of passage you're reading. But again, these strategies do still work as students are able to relate things to what they already know and their background knowledge. All right, so let's look at this one. So this one actually ties back into vocabulary. If students understand what setting is, they're able to go ahead and eliminate some answers here. So, which quote from the text describes the setting? So, students should know that setting is the time and the place that something happens, not just place, it's also time. So, at what time are things happening? So, if we look at answer choice A, her brown eyes peeked out of the fur lined hood, which outlined her round, full face. All right, so this answer choice here is not giving us any indication of where they're at or what time anything is happening. So this one would be, as we refer to, as a throwaway. Okay. Um, oops. There we go. So I'm gonna just go ahead and mark that one out. So that one is a throwaway. So she held tightly to the side of the sled with her oversized gloves. Okay, so she's on a sled, so there may be some snow, so it may be some time in the winter, but we're not exactly sure yet. So I would leave that one there for now. If kids are reading, they may think, well, there's a sled, it's winter, so maybe that gives us an idea. So we don't want to necessarily throw that one away quite yet. We'll look at C. So Libby reached out towards the pine trees and, grabbed, one of the now covered branches. All right. So if she is outside reaching for trees, kind of just gave the answer. We know that she is outside somewhere because there's going to be pine trees and she is grabbing onto the pine trees outside. So we may want to leave that one up there. She reached down for the metal anchor and pushed it over the edge of the sled. So again, we have sled there, but it's not necessarily giving us any indication of where she is just because she pushed it over the edge of the sled. So with this one, I truly think there could possibly be in 3 throwaways, but we always do at least want to get down to 2. And then once students can go back and look at the 2 answer choices left, they would most likely realize that C gives us a little more indication of where she's at, talking about the pine trees and grabbing one of the pine trees with now covered branches. She would be outside somewhere. All right, so enough of ELA. Let's actually look at, just kidding, ELA. Okay, so here is another one. And this has definitely been going or talking about a little more in 5th grade lately. I know, especially with my group of kids. So let's look at the question. So, why is it important for a chef to have creativity? All right, so right off the bat, students are going to know or should have some idea of what creativity means when you're creating something, when you're making something unique. So we're going to want to look for examples of that in your answer choices. If you do not see an example of that in your answer choices, that is a choice that we could possibly throw away. So A, the chef has been willing to find enjoyment when working on the weekends and holidays. Good job to this chef for working on the weekends and holidays, but that is not showing us any type of creativity in his work. So that one is going to be a throwaway. The chef has been able to change the menu for each group being served. Okay, so the chef's got to think on his feet, be able to change things based off of what group of people he is getting. That is a way to be creative. So we're not going to throw that one away quite yet. The chef has to be able to plan ahead to prepare for large groups of customers. Planning ahead is not being creative. Planning ahead is being prepared. So that does not necessarily give us any indication that he is being creative. So there's our two throwaways. And then if the students come down at choice D, the chef has been able to communicate directly with all those involved with preparing food. That is not an idea of creativity. So just looking between the two answer choices, students will be able to identify that D has nothing to do with creativity, which eventually would give them the correct answer, which would be B. All right, so as you can see, this strategy does do a lot of students having to think through their problems and, like I said, really connect back to that background knowledge, especially with reading. So let's look at some with math. Okay, so I don't remember exactly what grade this is. This may be fifth. So after basketball practice, 8 players equally shared 3 large bottles of water. What fraction of a bottle did each person get? Okay, so right off the bat, what I tell my students is go ahead and figure out what information you know. We have 8 players, and we have 3 bottles. Okay, so using that information, if you're a fifth grade student, you know that our answer is going to be a fraction, and we're going to be making a fraction by looking at what is being shared and how it's being shared. So how many bottles between how many players, and that's going to create our fraction. Okay, so looking at our answer choices over here, I know that somewhere in my equation, I'm going to have the number 8. I'm going to have the number 3. Those numbers can, right off the bat, I can go ahead and get rid of answer choice A and B. And then from there, I'm just going to have to figure out what is being shared, which in this case would be the 3 large bottles. What's being shared is going to be on top. So my numerator would have to be 3. There is my answer. So right off the bat. Okay. Math can sometimes be a little bit easier. All right. Let's do another one. Okay. Let's do this one here. Let's get off of fractions for a little bit. So, which expression matches the words 8 less than the product of 12 and 4? All right, so these are definitely one of those problems where you're going to kind of have to break down problems. So we have 8 less, so I know somewhere there's going to be some subtraction. Then the product, which I know is multiplication of 12 and 4. So just using that information, I know that within my expression, 12 and 4 is going to have to be multiplied because we have that product. So my 2 throwaway answers for this one will be B and D, because in those answer choices, it is being divided. So now the students would have to sit there and think a little bit more about which one of these expressions would give the best answer for this question, but they're only looking at 2 answer choices instead of 4. Okay. All right, here is another one with models because we are seeing lots and lots of more models on our EOG test. So each of the triangles below has 3 sides of equal length, excuse me. In which choice does a triangle have 1/6 of its area shaded? So right off the bat, we can see that every single one of these triangles are split into 6 pieces, okay? And each of them have one area shaded. But the thing about fractions that students must keep in mind is that when you have fractions, your sections are cut into equal pieces. So A is not cut into equal pieces. These pieces on the side are smaller than these pieces in the middle. Same thing for B. So that's 2 answer choices thrown away already. And then if students can look a little bit closer, they will also see that C is also not split into equal pieces. So their answer choice would have to be D. But if students cannot look at C and D and tell right off the bat, A and B would be your 2 throwaways for that one. Okay, let's do some science questions for 5th grade. Let's do this one. So which is a characteristic of most single-celled organisms. So again, this is for 5th grade because 5th grade does take a science EOG. All right, so students should already, and what I tell them to do for their white paper strategy with science is to make sure that those vocabulary words that you see in your text, you're writing down notes about those vocabulary words. So if I'm thinking of a single-celled organism, I know that this is a cell that still has to perform all life functions, but it does it on its own. It doesn't have any specialized cells. It is just one cell. Using that little bit of information there, I can go ahead and eliminate answer choices. Cells do not have circulatory and respiratory systems of their own, okay, especially a single cell. So that one would be out. And I just said that single celled organisms do not have specialized cells, which are cells that do certain jobs. So B would already be out as well because they do not have different types of cells. So students would be looking at answer choices A and C, which again are going to increase their chances of getting the question correct just from knowing a few things about the vocabulary in the actual question. So that's just a few examples of some thinking that you can go through with your students when they're bringing home homework, practice test, anything that you may be working on at home or anything that they may be bringing from school. And again, it is a very good strategy for students to have. It challenges them to see what they already know, what connections can they make to their background knowledge, and what connections can they make to the knowledge that they are learning right here in the classroom, and how that can highly increase their chances of getting the question correct. Sorry my video was so long, but hopefully you enjoyed it and learned a few things. And if you have any other questions, feel free to contact us. And again, I hope this was helpful. So you guys have a wonderful afternoon.